everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from January 6th, 2023. We have moved into 2023 with our look back now. And I'm recording this on July 4th, 2023. You guys won't see this till the 8th, but this week, just with my schedule, it was better for me to record and do this a little bit early. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is actually most relevant because the market is always moving and changing. Also, as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. You will notice this week that I don't have completely organized by topic like I usually do. This was the first week of Tom's list being delayed, so I did the cash or trash for the CBSI list. Didn't include the Tom books, so you'll also notice that I have predictions for the CBSI books, but not for the Tom books, which are all at the end. All right, why are we doing this? Well, we do this to see what was going on in the market back then, what books people were chasing, why were they chasing them, and what's happened in the market since. Because, as you know, the market's always moving and changing, and should you be better off being patient on books, and what books are better off to be patient on versus ones that you should go out and get. Is really why we kind of look at this, just to see what we can learn. If you've been following this list for any length of time, you know patience is the best policy generally, but there is some factors into that on which books you might accidentally want to chase and which books you definitely don't want to. So we got 17 books to talk about between the two lists this week, so let's dig in and see what we can learn this week. First up, we have Cave Woman, number 6. From 1995, and this is just kind of a hard to find book, and a little bit off type for your typical Cave Woman cover. So yeah, this is a hard to find cover, and if you're a Cave Woman fan, I guess this is a high demand. I don't know anything about these books, but back then it was going for 45 to 60. Since the listings are all still kind of in that range, but the only sale in the last 3 months on eBay was for $20, so that's just one sale. So that's definitely a trap. It's clearly not selling for those prices that people were listing it for back then, and as a result, we've only gotten one recent sale. Next, we have SpongeBob Comics, number 43. This Bill Sienkiewicz's homage to Hulk 340 with SpongeBob. And yes, Sienkiewicz's did a SpongeBob cover. This thing was going for 60 to 80 back then raw. 9.8 hit 400. This was backed up a little bit. It's now a $40 to $70 book for raw copies. 9.8, most recent 9.8 sale went for $390, so not a big difference right there. So we'll call this still down just a touch, a little bit of an I'll be back. But definitely, you wouldn't have done terrible if you bought it back then, but definitely would have been worth being a little bit patient to find a deal. Next, we have Star Wars number 30, the Stephanie Hans 1 in 25. So a 1 in 25 with the first appearance of the Nihil Sentry Droid. And so basically, this is a new character based on the Nihil, which were the villain of the High Republic era. So apparently there's some droids that are still alive, taking on Luke at this point, something along those lines. Haven't been reading the new Star Wars run. But anyway, back then raw copies were going for 30 to 40 with right out of the gate on this 1 in 25, which is not that great. Usually a 30 to 40 on a 1 in 25 means going to be less than ratio. That is the case here. $15 for the only recent sale. The listings are all start at 20 on this and go up to like 30, 40, but there's a $19.99 listing that's still sitting there. So yeah, the only sale here is 15. This one's definitely turned into a dumpster fire. It has not been, people have not been willing to chase it even for less than ratio. Next, we have Harley Quinn number 24. The Warren Lau store variant. This is the foil version of his store variant. This was a store variant. This is the foil version of this J. Scott Campbell homage to ASM. I forget the number now. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I should have wrote it down. But anyway, back then this foil variant was going for $90 raw. Now it's sitting at $100 raw. With the most recent sales, 9.8, 125 to 175. Interesting, not a lot higher for the 9.8. And actually more 9.8 sales than raw sales. So almost everybody sent this in, apparently, as well. So we're going to call this one steady and worth it. It's setting maybe up just a touch on that raw side. But again, the 9.8s are not that much more. You'd almost be better off chasing one of those. But this one's still holding pretty good value. And a lot of people seem to like this Harley cover. Next, we got another foil cover. We got Poison Ivy, number 8, the Jenny Frison 1 in 50 foil. Obviously, there is a regular variant of this that's not the foil that goes for super cheap. But the foil here back then was going for 50 to 75, which on a 1 in 50 is usually not a good sign. If it's only going for $50 to $75, that usually means it's going to be way less than ratio. Not the case here. This foil is actually holding pretty well. $75 to $100 for sales on this one. Interestingly enough, only one 9.8 sale, but it did go for $500, which is actually more than, I say one, there was actually two. There was a Signature Series 9.8 that also sold, that went for $400. It went for less than the sale for the just the regular 9.8. But we're still going to call this up and straight cash for this particular book, at least during the 6-month period. Next, we have Nightwing 87, the Bruno Redondo 1 in 50 connecting variants. I'm only putting one on the screen here, but there's two. They stack vertically instead of horizontally in these connecting variants of him going up the fire escape. And this is basically that book where all the pages, if you unfolded it, would all connect, that they did, which is really cool. They've also just recently done the one with where it's all from his point of view, the artist. So they've been doing some fun things with Nightwing. This was the first one of those. The set of the two 1 in 50 variants was going for $130 back then, with 9.8 set going for $500. No recent sales of raw sets. The only recent sale of a 9.8 set went for $175, so way down on this one. Turned into a bit of a dumpster fire if you paid that $500. Although, I feel like that's a bit of a deal because you see where it's listed, but just not a lot of sales. The market hasn't readjusted to where people are willing to pay for this at the moment, at least. So for now, we got to definitely call this a dumpster fire. Next, we have Superman Adventures number 5, first appearance of Livewire. This hit the list because we got news that basically Livewire was going to be a part of the new relaunch Superman stuff that was coming in 2023. I don't know how big a role she's actually playing, but she was going to be one of the villains featured. So that caused some renewed interest in her first appearance. Raw copies back then were averaging 60. 9.8 went for 200 plus. Now a raw copy will cost you 25 to 70, with most of the sales like 30 to 40-ish. 9.8, 150 to 200. So this one's backed up a little bit. Not a lot, but kind of just returned to where it typically is long term, with a few sales still in higher up where this one was at back in the spring. Next, we have Incredible Hulk number 347, first appearance of Joe Fixit, and this hit the list because we got news we were going to get a Joe Fixit series this year. And I think that's actually been coming out already, but I'm not 100% sure. Raw copies back then were going for $20, 9.8 going $240 to $300. Now it's a $5 to $20 book, 9.8, $200. So another I'll Be Back. You could say borderline on this one, trap, but we'll go with an I'll Be Back here, as this book is definitely backed up. So despite the series coming, it's kind of returned to what its long-term value is, which is not unusual. Next, we have Thor God of Thunder number 19, the first appearance of Dario Auger, who is like a Minotaur and some other stuff. Anyway, this was a person that a couple years ago, this book went through the roof because people were specking that Christian Bale was going to play this character in Thor Love and Thunder, and it turned out, no, he's playing Gore. So this book went through the roof. It crashed way down. And then we got rumors that supposedly there was some rumor that Ben Affleck was going to be this character going forward at some point. That doesn't appear to be the case at all, but this was the rumor, which caused people to jump back on this book. Raw copies jump back up to $30. 9.8s jump back up to 75 to 100 after being all the way down to around 30. Now it's a $5 to $15 book and a $30 to $60 9.8. Yeah, that's a dumpster fire. This was, maybe eventually we'll get this character, but I don't think any of the rumors so far really indicate that you should be chasing it at all. All right. Next, we have a actual key kind of book. We got Amazing Spider-Man number 252, the first appearance of the black suit. Back then, 9.8 hit 1,800, which caused it to hit this list. Raw copies now, or 9.8 now is going around 1,600 right now. Raw copies 1 to 200. So this is a great book, but it is backed up a little bit during this period. Not a whole lot, but overall, I think this is a pretty, you could argue maybe I should have called this steady I'll Be Back instead of down and I'll Be Back, but with the limited data I got here, we went with down. But yeah, it's definitely not down a lot, and anytime you can find this for a lull, great book to get. Next, we're going to be moving into the Tom books at this point. We had some overlap. We had 3 books that overlap between the 2 lists, but these are all just Tom books, which means there's no prediction for me because they weren't involved in my Cash or Trash show. First up, we have Fantastic Four number 185, and this is the first appearance of Nicholas Scratch, the son of Agatha Harkness, and this all had to do with rumors related to the Agatha series that we're getting at some point. I don't know what the timing is on that at this point. Back then, raw copies were going for $30, 9.8 going for $4.50. Now it's a $5 to $20 book raw, but 9.8, actually, most recent 9.8 sale actually went for $500. So 9.8 still up a little bit, but overall, like almost all the sales are raw, and they're definitely down in a bit of a trap from $30 average down to like a $10 average. So we will see if we get this character or not. I know a lot of the speculation around this character had to do with Senior Scratchy, the bunny that she had in WandaVision. We'll see if that was actually this character or just a bunny. So, next we have Action Comics number 835, the first appearance of Livewire in the main DC continuity. So this is the other Livewire book. Tom talked about this one, where CBSI talked about the other one that we had, which was just her first appearance in comics. This is her first appearance in the continuity, which didn't happen until 2006. Back then, raw copies were going for $12, and 9.8 went for $139. Now it's a $10 to $20 book, which is kind of what this has always been, a $10 to $20 book. Back then, it was really sales driving this being on their list. 9.8, 71 to 100. So another kind of down. I'll be back. You could argue that the raw sales are worth it, but like, was there any reason to chase it? No. It's just kind of, this is where this book kind of sits, and that's where it's back to. All right, we got a few books left here. What do we got? 4 or 5 books left. First up, we have Berserker number 1. This hit the list because issue 11 finally came out. I guess there'd been some delays. I've been following Berserker, but even in issue 11, it said, "Hey, there's going to be more delays before 12, but we want it to be good." So issue 11 finally dropped. So it caused a little bit of renewed interest, mostly a spike in sales numbers, not a spike in value. Back then, a lot of people, before this came out, we've known that there's supposedly a movie coming. We know that there's an anime series coming. But anyway, so yeah, there's been a lot of interest in this book, but there's also a lot of copies of this book out there. Back then, raw copies were going for $6, 9.8 went for $65. Now raw copies are $5 to $15, 9.8, $60. This is basically steady and worth it. Like I said, it was really not a change in value back then. It was more of just a bunch of sales because 11 came out. Next, we have Blue Beetle Graduation Day number 2, the first appearance of Victoria Cord. So this is actually the reason I should have went back and tried to look this up, because I didn't have this written down when the variant of this came out last week. We talked about it last week. But apparently this is the character that really people were specking on, because supposedly she had been Susan Sarandon is supposedly playing this role in the Blue Beetle movie. Even though, they were working on a movie, she was playing this role before the character ever got introduced in the comics. But this is what this character came out in December. Back then, raw copies were $4 to $6, so basically covered to a little more. Now it's a $5 to $15 book, which is kind of like that minimum standard for almost any kind of key. So we're going to call this steady and worth it. We'll see if we get any kind of jump with the movie. If we do, I would sell it right then and then come back later and get it for cover price, because I think that's what the pattern is going to be on this one probably. All right, 3 books left. We have Powers of X number 1, the first appearance of Rasputin the 4th. And basically this hit the list because of the launch of the Sins of Sinister event that supposedly she was going to play a big role in, or was coming back to be a big role in. I have no idea. I have not been reading X-Men for a while now, so I've kind of lost touch because there's just too many books and too many crossovers, and I gave up trying to keep track of it. I let my friend John tell me what's good and what's not. But anyway, back then, raw copies were going for $10, 9.8 going for $113. Now it's a $5 to $10 book, 9.8, 80. So definitely another down, and I'll be back. You could say borderline trap on that 9.8 value, but I'll be back. It covers it for this particular one. All right, 2 books left. Secret Wars 2, number 3, the first appearance of the Beyonder. This hit the list because We found out the Beyonder was going to be in the Moon Girl cartoon, which, boy, that came and went, and I didn't hear anybody talk about it after. I heard a lot of talk about it before in the lead up, but nothing after it came out. And then also that there were rumors that maybe the Beyonder would be part of Marvel's Secret Wars, the movie, which is like 3 years away still. But anyway, so that's why this book was on the list. Those two rumors were going around. I guess the Moon Girl cartoon wasn't a rumor. We knew it. But anyway, back then, raw copies of this were $15. A 9.8 hit $150. Now it's a $5 to $20 book. 9.8, $65 to $100. So another I'll Be Back. Another book that would just been better to just be patient on. All right. Last book this week is Superman 123. The first appearance of the blue suit Superman, which I know when this was happening, I remember people hated this. But yeah, basically they changed his powers, gave him some electrical powers, put him in a different suit that was kind of containing him back then. So it's for the storyline. Well, this is hitting the list because in the preview for the relaunched John Kent Superman series, we got basically him opening the shirt, and it was the blue electrical suit underneath. So I don't know where the stories went. I haven't been reading any of this, but I don't read a lot of Superman. But back then, raw copies were going for $6, 9.8 going for $92 because this was the 90s and there's a million of these, so there's not a lot of value here in general. But it was just a buzz and a lot of sales because of the John Kent stuff. Now raw copies are $5 to $20, 9.8 $100. So this one's actually kind of worth it. Maybe up marginally, you could say up, but we'll stick with worth it, steady and worth it. So I don't know if this storyline's good. I hope so, if people are enjoying it. But yeah, so that is this week's list. Kind of a weird, eclectic, a lot of comic buzz, only one MCU book, several covers between the two lists, but mostly a lot of comic-related stuff this week that was causing books to hit the list. So that's our video for this week. I hope you all had a wonderful 4th. I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer and it goes well. I want to thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time.